Journeyverse Journeys, Part 6. The town meeting was amusing to watch, from Xander's point of view at least. He sat off to one side, slowly running a whetstone over the blade of his machete, and tried to keep from grinning at the wild theories that were flying around the room. "Mutants!" one man was screaming. "They're mutants, I tell you!" Xander shook his head. Another one reading too many comic books. "God, I did it again! If I start snacking on tea and crumpets instead of soda and Twinkies, me and G-Man are going to have serious chat about responsibilities of role models in today's youth." "Get serious, Mike. They have to be some government experiment. Nothing else makes sense." The first voice, presumably Mike, immediately started arguing, and Xander let out a sigh of uselessness of the debate. Keep 'em from killing you first, then worry about what to call 'em. "Were you serious?" An old man had approached him softly, almost causing Xander to jump when he spoke. "About what?" "Demons." The man spoke the word almost reverently, as if it meant something to him. Xander took a look at the man and understood why instantly. "Yes, father, I was serious." The priest sat down. The look on his face was a cross between fear and relief. "Why do you think this?" "Been protecting my hometown from things for nearly 3 years now," Xander shrugged. "They're not hard to spot once you know what you're looking for." "But," the man trailed off for a moment, "what evidence do you have that they are demons?" "This bunch? Nothing but personal experience." Xander watched the old man sigh. "But since vampires and most demons react badly to religious icons and holy water, it's a safe bet." The man smiled. "Crosses hold them back?" "Like I said, I don't know about this bunch. Maybe they're a lower level group." "Lower level? How?" "Do I know?" Xander smiled and hefted his machete. "This thing killed them pretty easily. That's a pretty good sign, even if I did have it blessed by a priest, a rabbi, and a Wiccan witch." "Witch?" The priest paled slightly. Xander smiled again, continuing to run the whetstone over the blade. "Sounds like the setup for a joke, doesn't it? A priest, a rabbi, and a witch walk into a bar?" The priest actually chuckled at that. "I suppose it does." "Witches are a powerful force on the earth, Padre, but they're human, so a few bad eggs ruined the name over the centuries. From what my friend keeps lecturing me on," Xander smiled as he thought of all the Wiccan lectures Willow gave him as he tried to tune out, "witches, the Wiccan ones at least, draw their powers from the nature spirits that roam the planet. Call it Earth Mother, Gaia, or whatever else. Same thing, different name. You and the other men of the cloth draw your abilities, whether they be blessings, holy water, exorcisms, or some other stuff that only a few of you probably have any clue about, from your god." "Which faith?" Xander laughed. "Any of them, from what I've seen. I had to hold a vampire back once with an Egyptian symbol. Can't remember what it was called, and a friend of mine used her Star of David to good effect. Frankly, I prefer the crosses, but that's mostly 'cause they're easy to hold in a fight." The priest laughed at that. "I never considered that as a good reason to carry a cross before." Xander chuckled. "Considering my after-school hobby, sometimes it's all I think about." The priest became serious again. "Do others know?" "What, about demons?" At the priest's nod, Xander continued. "Sure. I've personally had a hand in preventing Armageddon at least, 3, 4 times, something like that." The priest paled at the calm manner the boy had in front of him spoke of the end of days. Xander ignored him and continued. "Now, granted, my town was built on a dimensional portal to hell, so that sort of thing happens a bit more often than elsewhere. But I doubt that all the world's evil is located in Sunnydale. So, since we're all still alive, it's safe to say that there are other groups fighting the good fight around the planet." "You don't know?" the priest asked somewhat fearfully. "I've met some. Not many, but some." Xander shrugged again. It was becoming a familiar gesture, and continued to sharpen his machete. "Our fight isn't meant for the light of day, Padre. Most people don't want to know what's out there, and they're pretty militant about it." The priest followed Xander's eyes to the argument that was still burning through the town meeting. Sadly, he shook his head, uncertain whether to feel pride that there were people like the boy Beside him, willing to fight the evils of the world, or shame that the members of his flock were so quick to bury their heads in the sand? What will you do now? Xander considered his options slowly. I think I'll hang around town for a bit, Father. Those 4 last night might have been the bunch, but I doubt it. Probably something big going down if they're desperate enough to attract this kind of attention. Do you need any help? Well, I wouldn't mind some holy water and a couple crosses, Xander winced. I lost mine in a fight a few days ago. The priest smiled. That, I think I can help you with. Anything else? A gun would be nice, Xander grinned. That, too, can most likely be arranged. Xander eyed the priest with his eyebrows raised. Really? I wasn't always a man of God, my son. Xander and the priest left the town meeting while the discussions were still in full swing. The local sheriff seemed to want to stop Xander on his way out, but an odd look from the priest turned him the other way. You have a car, Padre? No, the old priest replied. I normally walk. Well, not tonight. Xander wasn't walking anywhere. I'll give you a lift. The old man acquiesced, climbing into the passenger side. Let's go to the church. I live in the rectory. Xander nodded. He could see the steeple from where he was, and he drove off in that direction. Do you mind if I make a long-distance call? Xander asked as he looked around the room. The old priest smiled slightly. Not at all, but may I ask why? I want to call a friend to see if he can figure out what's going on here in town. Then by all means, the priest waved him towards the phone. Xander picked up the phone and dialed Giles's number from memory, watching with some interest as the priest opened a large wooden trunk in the corner. Yo, G-Man! Xander smirked. Yeah, I know. What's your point? The priest raised his head at the bantering tone. Obviously a good friend. No, look, I'm here in a town called Terrace Point in Montana. Oh. It made the national news, has it? Yeah, well, here's what it didn't make CNN. Xander launched into a rough description of the demons, often using words that fell far short of actually being descriptive. They're a what demon? Okay. Well, that's different. Oh, that's not good. You sure? Great. No, she'd never make it here in time. I'll see what I can do. Give you a call in a day or two. Relax, G-Man. I'll be fine. Okay. See you when I get home. Bye. Xander put down the phone and sighed. Giles put down the phone and sighed. Dear God. I thought it was Sunnydale that attracted the vampires and demons. But perhaps it's Xander. What is it? The priest walked back across the room, with a hardwood case in his hand. Xander bit his lip, digging around in the military duffel he had brought in with him. Shit demons. And that's their name. I'm not cursing. Who names these things? The priest chuckled. I don't know. Perhaps they have a sense of humor. They'd better, Xander replied, pulling a pair of military khakis from his bag, along with a black t-shirt, or else someone upstairs really likes to mess with our minds. The priest shook his head, the small smile still in place. Here, these may be of some help. Xander looked up and took the hardwood case the priest offered him. He put it down on the small desk he was sitting beside and gently opened the box. Holy, Xander whispered reverently. Inside, nestled in the red felt interior, were 2 pearl-handled, nickel-plated Colt .45 automatics with 3 extra magazines apiece. Neatly folded into a side of the compartment was a well-worn leather shoulder holster for the 2 pistols and a box of .45 caliber ammunition. Not precisely holy, the priest shook his head. Those guns have a long history on both sides of the line between good and evil. They must be worth a fortune, Xander said as he examined the craftsmanship on the weapons. The priest snorted. These are weapons, not collector's pieces. I retired them a long time ago, and never thought that they would see the light of day or the dark of night again. Now I see that maybe they have a job to do after all. I give them to you, and trust that you will put them to good use." Xander nodded slowly, not really trusting his voice, and drew the 2 weapons from the case. The 2 Colts felt molded to his hand, awakening buried memories of the soldier spirit as he professionally disassembled the 2 weapons, finding them to be in perfect working order, reassembled them with a fast, sure movements. When he was done, he looked up and saw the priest looking at him oddly. "You do that very well for someone your age. I see you have used pistols a lot in your work." Xander shook his head. "This is the first time I've actually held one of these in my hands." The priest's eyes widened. He believed the boy was telling the truth, but it didn't seem possible. "A couple years ago, I decided that it would be a good idea to dress up as a soldier for Halloween. Unfortunately, I live in a town where weird stuff happens. An old enemy of one of my friends came to town to play a little prank. He cast a spell that turned everyone into their costumes. I became a Vietnam vet for a night." Xander looked at the 2 pistols a little moodily. "I still have the nightmares, but sometimes I also remember the skills." The old man shook his head. "You have led a very interesting life for one whose true adventures are only beginning." Xander smirked. "Don't say that, Padre. I've had a belly full of adventures, more than enough to last me." With that last, Xander grabbed his clothes and guns and the leather harness and moved into the bathroom to get changed. "May you live in interesting times," the old Padre smiled sadly. "The Chinese said it well, and I fear, Alexander, that you have been cursed, as was I." Xander emerged from the bathroom, dressed in a pair of surplus khaki army pants and a black t-shirt. He was wearing both pistols in their leather shoulder harness and had stuffed the magazines into the large pockets of his pants. He reached into his duffel and pulled out a purple button-up shirt and tossed it on loosely, using the baggy shirt to cover the 2 Colts underneath. "My friends say that the shit demons," Xander winced as he said the name, "are just lackeys. They had to be summoned by someone else." The priest nodded slowly. "So we have something more powerful calling the shots?" "Or someone," Xander said, grimacing. "We could have a local dabbling with the black side of witchcraft." The old priest winced. He didn't want to believe that one of his flock was the cause of the town's troubles. "How will we find out?" Xander pursed his lip. "I don't know. Depends on whether these guys can speak English, I guess." "What now?" Xander grinned. "Now I go out and reacquaint myself with the time-honored tradition of demon and vampire hunters." The old priest smiled hesitantly. "And that would be?" "I hang out around the graveyards and try and look tasty." Time-honored or not, the process of patrol, according to the Book of Buffy, was all too often a dull waste of time. That's what Xander found himself up against this time. Hours of boredom to be followed, if he got lucky, by a second or 2 of terror. It was worse than he expected. Xander wandered the town, hitting both graveyards the priest directed him to in the first hour, to no avail. Only 2 graveyards? Man, I am so in the wrong town for this tactic. By the end of the night, when the first glimmerings of dawn were first showing on the horizon, Xander was completely and totally demoralized. "I'm going to need a new tactic," he whispered to himself as he followed the road back to the church. "Slayer patrol method aside, this isn't working. Maybe you have to be a blonde bombshell or other petite beauty for this technique." This has been Tenhawk's Journeyverse Journeys, Part 6. Like, comment, and subscribe below.